Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Siddharth, and I'm from the Log 360 product team, and I will be your host and presenter for today's session. I'm also joined by Jay, who's from our tech support team, and he's here to answer any questions that you have on the live chat. Before we get started, I just want to get a couple of housekeeping things, routine things out of the way. The first is that I just want to make sure there's no issue with the audio and you have no issues viewing my presentation. At any point of the webinar, if you face any glitches, do reach out to us on the live chat option that you see on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll try to resolve your issue immediately. And apart from that, I just want to let you know that we'll be sending you the recording of today's session. You'll be receiving a video within a couple of days, a YouTube link, and you can easily share the recording with your colleagues as well, right? So just want to make sure everything is all right. We've already got a lot of you who've joined in well in advance, and we're still getting more attendees joining in. So just let us know at any point during the webinar. If you have any issues, reach out to us on the live chat, and also make use of the live chat to engage with us and tell us some of the problems that you are dealing with your GDPR implementations and any specific areas in IT security that you are looking to address, right? So this is the agenda that we've planned for you today, but the agenda, to be very honest, is really flexible. And at any point, if you would like to discuss something over and above what you see in the agenda, do engage with us on the live chat, because these live events are a great way for us to interact with our prospects and our customers around the world and understand what problems you are trying to solve and help you and provide a solution to your problems, right? So let us know if there are any extra areas that you'd like to discuss in detail, and I can just intertwine that into our webinar as we proceed, and I can talk about it for the benefit of the entire audience, or you can just engage on a one-on-one chat discussion with our product experts here today, right? So this is the agenda. We've got the Article 33 of the GDPR, and we're going to be looking at exactly what that is and exactly what we're going to interpret it and look at exactly what admins are expected to do with the advent of Article 33. We're going to be looking at what SIEM, the age-old technology, has to do with Article number 33, right? So we're going to look at how it is related to Article 33 and how it can actually help you meet the objective. We'll also look at some best practices, right? So these are best practices, industry-wide accepted best practices for detecting and mitigating data breaches, right? Specifically, we're going to be focusing on detecting security incidents, right? Being able to detect that something malicious has happened in our environment. So these are things that you can take away and look at implementing in your organization at the earliest, because these are really what the experts in the industry and the experts at Manage Engine have formulated, right? So we'll also look at what you need to do in terms of reporting data breaches. So some of you might already be aware that the GDPR expects mandatory data breach notification. So this is really to say that we look at what kinds of things you need to actually put in your report to your auditors in case you are reporting an incident, right? And we'll also be touching upon Manage Engine Log 360, which is our comprehensive SIEM solution. And over the course of the webinar, if I'd like to, just illustrate a point, I might just jump into the tool, right? I'm not going to make this a product-specific webinar and pitch the product to you. It's not going to be a sales pitch or anything like that. So don't worry about that. I'm just going to probably use the tool to illustrate a point or two, right? So this is the agenda. I think most people have joined by now, right? So we had a lot of people coming in over the last minute or two. So I was just sort of dragging my introduction a little bit. So I hope everyone is all settled down, and what you can expect from this session is a 35 to 40-minute presentation with a small demo along with the presentation. And the last 15 to 20 minutes, we leave the floor open for questions. and you can reach out to us on the live chat. We can try to do a live Q&A. We've got a really good large turnout today. So at any point, if you have questions, do shoot them out on the live chat, and at the end of the webinar I can try to do a live Q&A so that the entire audience can benefit from what's being discussed. And if not, we would still keep answering your questions throughout the session. So make sure you engage with us, because that's what we really love about doing online events such as these. Right, so let's get started with today's session, right? And we're going to start off by looking at what is a data breach, right? What does the word data breach actually mean in the context of the GDPR, right? Because the reason I'm defining a data breach to start off with is because normally when I say data breach, and I must confess, I myself think that data breach is something when someone from the outside just comes, maybe steals or copies data from my file server and leaves, right? So in my head, data breach, this is the first thing that comes to mind when I think data breach. And that might well be the same thing that comes to your minds, right, when you hear the word data breach. But the thing is, according to the GDPR, the scope of what a data breach is has been expanded, right? So what companies think what is a data breach before, I mean, there are a lot of other things that could still constitute a data breach that companies need to consider, right? So it says that this is text from the GDPR that you see on the screen. It says a data breach is a breach of security leading to the destruction, loss, alteration, or unauthorized disclosure or access to personal data, right? So you can see here the text goes beyond just say words like disclosure or loss. It says alteration, right? Alteration is a problem, which is to say that if you have personal data in your servers and that personal data had an unauthorized alteration, right? If it were to change someone's personal details, that is still a data breach, right? So it might be a little strange for us to comprehend this, because we wouldn't really categorize that as a breach. But when in GDPR, for this webinar and for the GDPR in general, when we say data breach, we mean all of these scenarios, right? Unauthorized access, just viewing personal data that someone is not supposed to view, that is still considered a breach, right? It's not that they have to copy the data and leave your organization or anything like that, right? Destruction, that's a problem. If you get encrypted and lose data, that is a data breach, right? So this is very important. Some of you might well be aware of this. I can see that we've got a pretty big audience, and a lot of you guys are security administrators and involved with compliance and things like that. So you guys probably know this even better than me. But I just wanted to start off by talking about the definition of a data breach, because it's very important we understand what we are dealing with when we say data breach in the context of the GDPR, right? So I also have a nice stat here for you from the Verizon's 2018 Data Breaches Investigations Report, which says that 68% of breaches took months or longer to discover, right? 68%, that's 2/3 of data breaches taking months to just discover, right? Imagine if tomorrow you go to your office, you log into your laptop, and a third party is informing you that one of your databases was breached three and a half months ago, right? How scary would that be? Imagine the consequences to your IT and security operations if you were to be notified about something like that. And the truth is, 68% of the breaches that Verizon investigated took months to just discover. Now, this is a problem because of article number 33, right? Notification of a data breach. So you can see I've given you text. This is not stuff that I've made up. This is not me paraphrasing. This is actual text from the GDPR, which clearly says, in the case of a personal data breach, the controller shall, without undue delay and where feasible, not later than 72 hours after having become aware of it, notify the personal data breach, right? not later than 72 hours, notify the personal data breach. What did we see on the previous slide? 68% of breaches took months or longer to discover. And what is your deadline here? 72 hours, right? You have to, the GDPR expects you to be in a position to discover a data breach as soon as possible. And once you discover it, you have to report the data breach to your auditors within 72 hours, right? So I have a question already, and I was expecting this. We've got a question from John, who wants to know, is it the case that if you become aware of a breach today, but the breach happened a couple of months ago, are you non-compliant, right? So I'm guessing that's what you meant, John, by your question. That's how I understand your question. And the answer to that is, well, the truth is, if you still become aware of it only today and you still are reporting it within 72 hours with solid reasons as to why you discovered the breach late, right? And if you're able to show that you actually had solid security measures in place, then no, you will not be considered non-compliant. You're still good to go. However, if you discover a breach late and you're reporting it without proper details, you're not able to tell your auditors exactly what happened, but you just tell them that, hey, a breach occurred a couple of months ago. I don't know, a few people lost their data, maybe. I think some records were compromised. Then you've got a problem, right? So you can see in the second point, it clearly says that the controller shall document any personal data breaches comprising the facts related to the data breach, its effects, and the remedial action taken. So the GDPR wants you to not only document the details about the breach, but also things like the effects of the data breach, that is the consequences of the data breach, and also if you're taking any remedial action. I mean, you have to take remedial action and you have to report that, right? What are you going to do to fix the breach? Now that you know that there's a breach, what are you going to do to fix the breach and ensure damage control, right? So this is where we are. We have a policy which expects us to notify data breaches within 72 hours, and the documentation should not only contain details about the personal data breach, but also about consequences of the breach and exactly what action was taken by your organization to curb the breach, right? So having these technical measures that we hear a lot in the GDPR, the technical and organizational measures, having these security measures in place becomes all the more important simply because of Article 33, right? So I'm going to go over exactly what you need to have in the report, right? So and after this we'll actually look at the best practices, but I just want to be very clear here at this point that if you are breached, unless you have proper security systems in place, there is no way that you'll be able to investigate the incident and report the details to your auditors, right? So it's not like once you get breached, you can then procure security technology and investigate the incident. Only if you have these policies and measures in place will you actually be able to discover and investigate security incidents and report breaches if you have to, right? So here's what you have to do if you're breached. You have to file an incident report with these details, right? These are things that the GDPR expects at a minimum, right? Any extra information will only make your case stronger, but at minimum, you need to give these details. The nature of the breach, what the breach was, right? You need to tell them. Was it a case of data exfiltration? Was it a SQL injection attack? Was it ransomware? This is basic. You need to be able to report on what the breach was. And then you've got the impact of the breach, right? Who was affected? Because this, and the third point, consequences, is very important here, because it's you know that personal data today, when it goes to the wrong hands, it can be misused, right? There's a lot of dangers of personal data being leaked outside. And there's a lot of awareness today, especially in Europe and in the US, a lot of appreciation for privacy of an individual's data. Because if today someone knows my house address, my social security number, my credit card number, that could result in some serious harm to me, right? If it lands in the hands of the bad guys. So you have to, in your report, mention possible consequences of having a data breach, right? So that's what they mean by impact of the breach and the number of data subjects affected. So you have to clearly tell in your report that, say, 150 data subjects lost, say their home address was compromised, and those details were exposed to the outside world, and as a result there are these consequences that uh, the affected data subjects might face, right? So that's something you have to do. And then measures adopted. So this again is what technical and security measures did you adopt to not only prevent the breach in the first place, but also once you discover the breach, what were the steps and actions that you took, right? So if it was a case of ransomware or something like that, what did you do to get your files back? These are response steps essentially that you're going to take, right? So this is something that has to be in the report. And then you've got contact details of the DPO, right? So this is basic. You have to give your contact details because that's how they're going to know how to contact you. So this is at a minimum what the GDPR expects. An incident report with these details. And in case you're not able to notify the auditors within 72 hours, you have to then give them a solid reason, right? So it can't be that you were on vacation or something like that, but I mean a real solid reason as to why the investigation, say, took more than 2 days and why you could not report the data breach during investigation, right? So there might be certain cases where it may genuinely not be possible despite best efforts. So in those cases, you would have to specify the reason for the delay, and that will be validated by your auditor. So it's not to say that you can take this as a relaxed measure where, oh, okay, so it's not very strict to be reported in 72 hours. But if you do, if you're not able to report in 72 hours, your reason has to be solid, right? So it's going to be validated by the auditors to actually determine if you are compliant or not. Right. So how are we going to approach the problem, right? So at this point, we know what Article 33 is. We know what we are supposed to do. We're supposed to report the breaches, and we know exactly what needs to be in the incident report. So to approach this problem, we need to focus on two things in particular. One is to reduce the breach dwell time, right? We'll get to that in a bit. And the other is to be able to quicken the process of incident detection and response, right? Being able to quickly detect that something malicious happened and to quickly try to fix it. Pretty straightforward. These are two things that we want to do. And to do this, we have to adopt different measures, right? Starting with measures to reduce the chance of being breached in the first place, right? This is ideal. We put in some measures so that we can reduce the chance of being hit by an attack in the first place. So this could be things like, if you're looking at patch management, making sure all your systems are running latest software. That helps, right, in terms of reducing the chances of being breached. Implementing other known best practices such as user education, blocking malicious IP addresses at the firewall level, email email content filtering, and things like that. These are all measures you can implement in order to reduce the chance of being breached. Then comes what we are focusing on today's webinar, which is measures to detect and respond to incidents, right? This is where SIEM and log management comes into the picture, because you need to leverage your logs in order to know that at a given point something bad happened, and so that you can quickly then respond to the incident, right? You also need measures to recover from a breach. Things like backup and recovery solutions, things like malware removal tools, things like that. Because if something bad happens, you still have to report how you are going to resolve the problem. So you need to have measures ready so that in case if you're hit by ransomware, or in case you're hit by any other type of malware, you're in a position to recover from the breach, right, and mitigate the effects of the data breach. So these are the three kinds of measures that you want to have, and I'm going to focus on the second point, which is measures to detect and respond to incidents. Right, getting started with SIEM. You know better than I do, better than most people, that your audit logs are going to be very crucial, right? Logs generated by your machines contain valuable information about what is happening on those systems at a given point of time, right? So if you were to just go and have a look right now at, say, your SQL Server logs, you're going to get a lot of details into exactly what's happening. Who is manipulating data, who is defining new schema, new tables, who is changing database roles and things like that, right? So your logs, they're going to be crucial when it comes to being able to detect and check if something bad happened. Your logs are also going to be important to be able to investigate, right? So once you find out something bad has happened, you have to refer your logs to know exactly what kind of activity is going on in your network, right? You also need your logs to report. So finally, when you conduct a forensic investigation, you have to search through your logs, and you have to get data about the data breach from your logs and furnish those details in your incident report, right? So it's pretty fair to say that your audit logs are crucial for compliance, not just the GDPR, but several compliance regulations otherwise as well. So to get started, you have to first identify the log sources in your environment, right? So this starts off. I have a few log sources that I've listed on the next slide, and this is basic things that most security teams worldwide will be dealing with, right? You have workstations, servers, domain controllers. You've got your systems that store data, your file servers and databases, your network devices like your routers, switches, firewalls, IDS, IPS. You've got your web applications, and of course, you've got your public cloud platforms, right? So if you look at today, a lot of us have data stored on the cloud. We might be using platforms like Office 365 or Salesforce, AWS, Azure. All of these platforms are not on our network premises, but are instead on the cloud, which is why it can get a little challenging to monitor them, but you still have to make sure you're getting logs from those sources as well, right? So I've listed these log sources specifically, not that it's an exhaustive list, but this is a good starting point that most organizations can focus on, because these are log sources that we all deal with commonly, right? I'm pretty sure most people here attending today's webinar have these things in their network, right? And all of these things generate logs. So you want to send logs from all of these things to your SIEM solution, right? So the first step, though, is to really identify what are the different log sources that you have in your organization. Make a list. You say you have 3 domain controllers, 100 workstations, 3 member servers. You have X number of routers and switches, firewalls. Make a list of all of this. Maybe you have an Office 365 platform with X number of tenants. So you have to really identify what is there in your network so that you can collect logs from those devices. Just coming back to the previous slide, and once you've identified the log sources, you have to specify an audit policy on those log sources so that the systems then start generating logs for the specified set of events, right? So you may be concerned about things like file accesses and file manipulations and things like that. So you have to define that audit policy on your servers so that those servers then start tracking the security events of interest and by generating logs for the specified set of events. And once they generate these logs, you want to ensure that you're getting all of these logs into a central repository, which is what your SIEM solution is. And by doing that, your SIEM solution can run daily reports for you, right? Run daily reports that can be scheduled so that you get these details about what is happening in your network delivered to your inbox on a daily basis, right? So you get a report to say all the files that have been accessed over the last 24 hours, right? I'll give you some more examples in the next slide, but I just want to let you know that this is what are the things you can actually achieve by deploying a SIEM solution, right? And the first thing in that is to be able to run daily reports to review security events. So you know that you have to reduce the breach dwell time. You have to detect a breach as soon as possible. So by doing things every 24 hours in terms of reviewing your network activity, you are essentially being able to catch a breach with a maximum delay of just 24 hours, right? So that's worst case scenario. Say you show up to work every day at 9 a.m. by if you're clear as per your 9 a.m. reports, if something goes wrong that day, the latest that you will be able to find out would be during your next day 9 a.m. report, right? So these reports are very important, and a SIEM solution can give these to you so that on a daily basis you're able to check and ensure that your network hasn't been breached. And in case you've been breached, you're in a position to have detected it with a maximum delay of just 24 hours, right? Because these are daily reports. Your SIEM solution can also go one step further and give you alerts in real time for security compromises, right? So you don't even have to wait all the way till the next day's security report to know something bad happened, but instead you'll be able to get notified at a given point when something bad happens, right? It gives you alerts. And a SIEM solution is also going to help you streamline the process of incident management, or as we say, end-to-end incident management, right? So right from the process of detecting a security incident to triggering an alert to investigating that alert to responding and resolving the alert, right? So a SIEM is going to help you for that end-to-end process, right from detecting to resolving a security incident. So this is what it can do for you. Now let's look at the practical sides, right? So this is, in theory, all of this sounds good. So far, we know that Article 33 exists. Article 33 expects you to report breaches within 72 hours. We know what the report needs to contain. We know that our logs are important. We know that our SIEM solution is going to help us leverage these logs. And we know what a SIEM solution can do for us, right? Report and alert and resolve security incidents. Now, let's look at the practical things. All this is great in theory, but let's look at examples of what kinds of reports you need to run. And we have curated a basic list here that you can look at in terms of getting started with security information and event management. Right? So these are basic reports that, oh, I'm sorry about that. I think we just lost audio for a few seconds. Sorry about that. So I was just saying that these are examples of security reports that you can run on a daily basis so that you know what are the important things that have happened in your network, and you're also in a position to detect if something was not supposed to happen or if something was malicious that could jeopardize the security, and take action before it's too late. Right? So you look at things like, the first thing that I want you to do is schedule reports based on their criticality, right? So if you know logs have specific severity levels, so if you look at your Windows log, you have things like information events, debug events, warning events, success events, and things like that. So make sure that you are running daily reports to actually detect any potential event that could jeopardize your security, right? So it's very neat to have these events categorized based on their criticality so that you know exactly how many types of each event occurred and exactly if any of those were malicious. Right, so this is a basic process to have in place. Make sure you're collecting all of these logs, and these logs are getting split up into reports based on their criticality, right? So you have reports for warning events, reports for critical events, and things like that. And then you've got privileged user activity. This is again something that's really important to track, because administrators can make changes that could jeopardize the security, right? So administrators could go and change something on a GPO, could change something on your network, on your router or your firewall, and that could potentially jeopardize security. So on a daily basis, make sure you're tracking administrator actions and know exactly what actions and changes they are carrying out in your network, right? And then you want to monitor firewall traffic. You want to know exactly what IP addresses are coming into your network, what IP addresses are going out of your network, right? So that's very crucial. You want to make sure that all the traffic in your network is healthy and it's coming from known trusted sources. So this is very important. Make sure you know what connections your firewall is accepting and what connections are being denied or blocked at the firewall level. You've got other security events that are commonly known to be important, such as logon events. Obviously, any attack, any security breach has a logon happening at some point in the attack pattern. So make sure you're tracking logons. File accesses, again, very important to know exactly who is accessing your files and folders, right? So by doing all of these things, these are just a few examples. This is obviously not an exhaustive list, but this is a good basic list to get started with. If you're using a SIEM solution already, try to get these reports scheduled and get these reports emailed to you on a daily basis. If you're using Log 360, you would be happy to know that all of these reports are available out of the box, as in they all get automatically generated. So you just have to specify your email ID that you want the report to be sent to, and you'll be receiving neat PDFs on a daily basis that help you review security event and ensure that your network over the last 24 hours has been in good shape and is not breached, right? So these are examples of reports. And then comes alerts, right? So reports, like I said, is something that you do so that you can periodically review activity on a daily basis, and you can check and ensure that everything is up and running the way it should be. Now, in addition to that, you need to have alerts, right? Because some of the events um, could just not wait until the next day for you to investigate, right? If you have a ransomware infection happening right now, you have to actually know that immediately, right? I can't have a report tomorrow morning that says that yesterday at 3:30 p.m. a ransomware infection happened on my file server, right? So this is where alerting comes into the picture. For certain specific kinds of events, you want to have alerts set up, right? So I have a few examples here. Things like account lockouts, an unauthorized access attempt to say sensitive financial information, malicious URLs trying to access your web server, security group membership changes, right? What if someone is added to the domain admins group in Active Directory? Things like that. Network configuration changes. What if someone modified a firewall policy, right? What if malicious software gets installed on your server? Things like this, SQL injection, cross-site scripting. This list goes on, right? So you need to have alerts set up for events like these, which cannot wait for your next day's report for you to go and investigate, right? So this would require immediate attention. So make sure you set up these kinds of alerts and what we call correlation criteria so that you can detect attacks, right, immediately. So I'm going to actually use this as an opportunity to jump into the event log analyzer module of Log 360. For those of you who are new to Manage Engine, we've got a SIEM solution called Log 360 that has a component called Event Log Analyzer that I want to show to illustrate what correlation and alerting actually means, right? So you guys can actually access the same machine that I'm going to use, because this is just a basic cloud demo that we've got, cloud-based setup that we've got for you. You can just access demo.eventloganalyzer.com and just log in, and you'll be able to get a glimpse of what the tool contains, right? This is obviously not a fully functional demo in terms of you can't actually add your devices, right? Because this is just hosted on the internet. But what you can do is you can download a fully functional 30-day free trial from the website, right? You can just go to Log360, right? Manageengine.com/log management would be the URL. I can just take you there if you'd like, just for checking out at a later point. Just manageengine.com/log management will take you to the Log360 homepage, and you can download a free trial of the product by just simply giving your email ID and your company name and some basic details, and you can download the product just like that. Like I click download and the exe will download immediately, right? So it's going to take just a minute to download the product and get up and running, right? So at a later point, if you want to explore the product, go ahead and do this. For now, I'm just going to use the demo website here to illustrate my point. So if you'd like, you can also just jump to demo.eventloganalyzer.com and just go through this with me if you wish. Right, so I'm just going to jump to the event correlation module, and I want to show you an alert that the product has triggered, right? So whole bunch of categories of alerts here. You can see things like file integrity threats and cryptocurrency and a whole bunch of things, that ransomware and database threats, whole bunch of things that you can explore. But I'm just going to show you a quick example, right? So let me just look at potential Windows threats, suspicious services installed, right? So the product has thrown up an alert, and we've simulated the data on this online demo. And if you look at the event timeline here, you can see that a whole bunch of things has happened in the network. You can see that there is some kind of brute force activity. The Windows account fails to log on repeatedly. This repeatedly happens, and then the account successfully logs on, and then a service is installed on the Windows machine, and then a service is started, right? So all of these events have been happening over a period of time, over 3.5 minutes or so. A whole bunch of things have happened, and the product is able to track the occurrence of these events based on a pre-built correlation algorithm, and it's able to alert you and say that, hey, suspicious software or service might have been installed on your Windows server and that you need to investigate. Now, what this does is that it allows you to immediately jump into the product, check exactly what happened. You can look at the details, right? So you can go and granularly look at what has happened, right? Get important details about these events. And in case you find that this is breach activity, you can take steps to curb the attack. And you also have all of these details about what happened, right? So this is going to be very important for filing your incident report, right? This is going to be very important for you to actually give these details to your auditors. So I just wanted to show this quick example to let you know exactly what you can achieve using a SIEM solution, right? You're able to find out, you're able to detect in real time that a potential compromise has happened in your network, and you're able to go and jump in and investigate into exactly what has happened, right? You're able to actually check the security events that happen, get the details about the incident, and export it as a report and furnish those details to your auditors, right? So that's why having these alerts becomes really important, and a SIEM solution can help you do that. You want to make sure you can make a note of this list. You want to make sure you're tracking these events at a minimum, and then a whole lot more over and above this, right? So this is just wanted to give you an example, a taste into what kinds of alerts you can actually receive and how you can actually quickly detect a potential compromise in your network, right? And that's going to be very important with the GDPR, because The GDPR is expecting you to quickly detect and report breaches, and a SIEM solution is going to be integral to being able to do that. Right. So once you've detected the incident, you obviously need to respond to the incident, right? So response is just as important as detection, because once you've detected something, you need to quickly respond and resolve the incident, right? And the GDPR expects you to report it within 72 hours. So you don't have much time, right? That's why we've uh, titled today's webinar as the 72-hour challenge, right? How to approach the 72-hour challenge. So when it comes to the response, you have to actually make sure that you have a proper streamlined process in place to be able to quickly, as you detect an incident, make sure that there's a process to respond, right? So this involves having tools and measures to actually do things like malware removal and recover from the attack and backup, restore a backup and things like that. But you also have to make sure your SIM solution is integrated with, say, a centralized ticketing tool, so that an administrator is given a ticket when an alert gets raised, right? So when the SIM solution raises an alarm for something that requires your investigation, the alert can be raised as a ticket in real time to your designated administrator, right? So that's what we do in Log 360. We integrate with several leading help desks, including Manage Engine's own Service Desk Plus. And what this does is it gives accountability to your breach resolution process, right? You're able to create a process wherein every alert that gets raised gets raised as a ticket to your designated administrator, right? So it's pretty straightforward in terms of how it works. You get an alert, you detect an incident, your SIM solution triggers an alert, and that alert gets raised as a ticket um, to your designated administrator, right? So this is very important, because when you furnish the details of a breach to your auditor, you are able to actually clearly point out what alerts got triggered during the breach and exactly who was responsible for the resolution. And you'll also have details on how long it took to resolve, and you're able to show really a accountable, streamlined process for detecting and responding to incidents. And that's what the GDPR wants, right? That's what the GDPR wants you to be accountable for the personal data that you've collected, right? It's forcing you to be accountable for ensuring security of personal data. And this is very important for that. Being able to detect, respond to, and resolve security incidents that could cause personal data loss, right? Personal data breach, rather, not limited to loss of data. So this is about incident response, and this brings me to the end of the presentation part of the webinar, right? So we are open to questions. We've been answering most of your questions in real time on the live chat. We just have a few pending questions that we are answering as I speak. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to do a live Q&A at this point, so please keep your questions coming on the live chat and we will answer them immediately, right? Just to let you know that we are still available for another 15-20 minutes, so just bear with us for anywhere between 30 seconds to 1 minute, and your questions on the live chat will be answered. Apart from that, I hope today's session was informative. I hope you learned something new from today's session, and I hope that you'd come for more online events that we do. Do take a moment at the end of the webinar to fill up the feedback form to let us know what you liked or didn't like about the session, and what suggestions you have for future webinars, right? What kinds of topics you'd like to see. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. We will be answering your questions over the next 10 to 15 minutes. Just bear with us for another few seconds, and you should have a response to an answer to your questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm signing off from the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great day ahead.